Korach, the Yakumu Lifnei Moshe. So we have Korach, Dosan Aviram, and the Torah makes a point. Who are they? They are Bnei Eliyav, Von Ben Peles, Bnei Ruvain. And it identifies them by their pedigree. Until now, the Torah never revealed their pedigree. It says, Dosan Aviram, when initially they had informed the Moshe Rabbeinu that when he killed the Egyptian, they were never identified by the pedigree. This is the first time regarding the mutiny against Moshe Rabbeinu, when they joined with Korach. Who are they? Dosan Aviram, Bnei Eliyav, and On Ben Peles. Now Korach, he's coming from a point because he's a person of pedigree. Therefore, he feels he was denied something which was rightfully his. On Ben Peles and Dosan Aviram, they're the sons of Ruvain. Ruvain is the Bechor. So again, they're also coming with a claim they have special pedigree. Because they have special pedigree, they're coming with a claim that Moshe's decision was not Hashem's decision, but they're coming to back Korach. We'll see in a moment. Korach is a very wise man. Why? Because he himself is not coming to claim that he should be the Kohen Gadol. He's coming to say that the Bechorim, and he comes and says, Kulonu Kadoshim, we're all holy. We'll see in a moment, because we all stood at Sinai, and we heard, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, so why should they be considered special? We're all special. We'll see in a moment. The Yakumu Lifnei Moshe Avanoshim Bnei Yisrael. They, the three of them, stood before Moshe, Vanoshim Bnei Yisrael, and people of distinction. Who are they? Chamisha Mosayim, Nesi Edo Kri Edo, Kri Moed Anshishem. The 250 people who qualified to be the Rosh Sanhedrin, the heads of Sanhedrin. Not only are they qualified to be members of the Sanhedrin, to be the heads of Sanhedrin. Could you imagine? Korach was able to convince these people. Korach, you understand, that this was his personal conflict of interest. But his conflict of interest, he was so persuasive, that he's even able to convince not even people who are qualified to be on the Sanhedrin, those who are qualified even to be the leaders of the Sanhedrin. This is the highest echelon of greatness. Even them, he was able somehow to convince, or to at least put a question in their mind, that Moshe himself, he took it all for himself. They called on Moshe. They assembled on Moshe and Aaron. V'yomer aleim rav lachem. You've taken more than you deserve. You have much. Ki kol edo kulam kedoshim. The whole congregation are all holy. Ubesochem Hashem, and God is in their midst. Umadua tisnasu akal Hashem. Why are you lording over the congregation of Hashem? It's interesting. We find, how do we know the law of minyan is 10? Because we find, regarding the Meraglim, they're referred to as Edo Hara, last week's reading. The evil Edo, the evil congregation. And when we say evil congregation, Edo is 10, because there were 10 of the 12 spies who brought back the negative reports. And we find the word Edo in regard to when you sanctify Hashem's name. So we find Edo, what we call Gzera Shava. Edo means 10. Then the Edo Ra, and because they were the Meraglim, Edo Ra, therefore, as a result of that, you're all going to be decreed and condemned to perish over the next 40 years. So they're bringing up this point, Edo. The Edo that you say are no longer qualified to go into the land So this is the point, and this is what the Ramban pointed out, that why did Korach at this point come to launch his attack against Moshe? Because he understood the people were a little bit quite disappointed with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu always came through for them, whether it was the Egel, whether it was the story with the Slav, they wanted meat. Every time he came through to them, although Hashem said, I will destroy them. This is one time he did not come through for them. And as we explained, because the story of the Meraglim was considered a public Chil Hashem, and the only way he could be atoned for Chil Hashem, even if you do tshuva, one has to die. That's why it was decreed that the generation has to die and wander for 40 years, for that reason. And Korach understood the appointment of Elitzov and Beluzil, which was the basis initially for Korach to, in his own mind, to see Moshe Rabbeinu practicing nepotism, it bothered him earlier, except until that point, he understood if he tried to attack Moshe Rabbeinu, he immediately would be discredited and his mutiny would be quashed immediately. It's only now that the people were disenchanted with Moshe, now he feels Moshe is vulnerable and he's able to launch his attack. See, when he launches his attack, he says, Kol Edo Kadoshim. The whole Edo, the Edo that you say that they all deserve to be condemned and die as the 10 Meraglim, and therefore we're all that worthy, Kulanu Kadoshim. They're all holy. So they're not speaking about themselves. The Edo, the people are Kadoshim. We'll see in a moment. Take a look at Rashi. Kulam Kadoshim. Why are they holy? Kulam Shamu Dvorim Bisinai Bipi Agvura. Now, we read the story about Miriam speaking about her brother, which was Lashon Hara. What was the point? When she had found out that Moshe had separated from his wife, what did she say to Aaron, her brother? We're also Nevi'im, we're also prophets. We didn't separate from our spouses. So why did Moshe separate from his spouse? So Moshe, immediately they're summoned to the Ol Moed, and Hashem says, don't you realize there's a difference between yourselves and Moshe? And how did you speak against Moshe Avdi? Meaning, at Sinai, Hashem had said to Moshe, Ato Amodi Modi. After Sinai, pre-Sinai, men and women, they were meant and they were obligated to separate from themselves, one from another. Because to receive the Torah at Sinai, they could not be in any way have any relevance to spiritual contamination. Therefore, they had to separate for 3 days. After the Torah was given, he says, Lech emelem shuv lehem lo'aleim. Tell them they should go back to their families. They're permitted to go back to their wives. But you remain with me. Because Moshe Rabbeinu prophesied in the awake state with his physicality. See, every prophet prophesies is in the sleep state, and it's not through the brain, through the mind. It's directly the neshama. So the body, even though it may be contaminated due to cohabitation, but it has no relevance because the prophecy, the communication is through the neshama. But if you prophesize in a wake state, your physicality always has to be in that pure state. Therefore, that's the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu, being at that special level, can never go back to his wife for that reason. Because that was his level of attachment to Hashem, that his physicality was so spiritualized that Hashem had directly communicated through his physicality. That was Moshe. As a result of that, Moshe had to couldn't go back to his wife. Miriam did not understand that. And that was the claim against her. Now, if that's the case, why did Klal Yisrael prophesy in a wake state at Sinai? At Sinai, they did not prophesy in a sleep state. It was in a wake state. Why? So the Sifarno explained, Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was in a wake state. It's something which is not to be fathomed. Because how could one's physicality have the capacity to receive that dimension of communication? Because they had to appreciate the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu was so spiritualized that even his physicality was touching upon the level of his neshama. However, the people themselves were not, so they couldn't fathom it. So God wanted they should appreciate that this reality is possible. So therefore at Sinai, they prophesied in a wake state, not in a sleep state. So when they heard Anochi Hashem Elokecho, the first of the 2 commandments, 10 commandments, they prophesied in the wake state. But why did they prophesize in their wake state? Only to give credibility to Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah, his dimension, that they should appreciate that it's possible. But they weren't worthy. They weren't worthy. It was only for Moshe. And now Korach is coming and saying, we're on your level. Kulanu Kedoshim. Because at Sinai, we heard Anochi Hashem Elokecha. You understand what's going on here? The basis to give Moshe the greatest level of credibility, that only he is that special person, and that prophecy, his prophecy is that special level, where the communication is a wake state, you only were able to experience that, to appreciate that who Moshe Rabbeinu is. And Korach is now coming with his claim that we all heard Anochi Hashem Elokecha. But identically as Moshe heard it. So why are we less worthy than Moshe? This is the claim. So what was the basis for Moshe's specialness? He's coming to say to the contrary. We're all special. And if we're all special, you have no right to take it all for yourselves. He's not saying we're all holy because we were taken to be God's people. Kulonu shomu dvorim b'Sinai mipi agvura. At Sinai, we heard directly from pi agvura, from Hashem. We heard the 10 commandments. We heard it directly. And how was Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy, as we mentioned the Rambam, how was it established, his credibility? Because they heard directly Hashem saying to Moshe, go tell them such and such in the presence of the Jewish people themselves. So they witnessed it firsthand at that special level to appreciate Moshe Rabbeinu. And Korach is coming now and says, Kolonu Kadoshim. We're all holy because we're at your level. So it's like mind-boggling. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came down with the second Luchos, what happened? He radiated holiness to such a degree they couldn't look at him. He had to wear a mask when he spoke to them. And he himself went to bat for them continuously. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed. And with all that now, because they were condemned to die, they're coming with a claim, Moshe, it's nepotism. You understand? People not only have short memories, because it's always the now, it's not what happened a moment ago, but even presently, at this moment, what is Moshe? How does he communicate? What's his dimension? It's a level of holiness which is nothing compared to it. So how do you even suspect that the basis for his decision was himself and it's nepotism? So the way we explained it, and this is how you can become so distorted, you could distort something to such a point. We asked the question, if they all stood at Sinai, and Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, B'cho yaminu l'olam, they will never question the veracity of your prophecy. So how does Korach come with this claim? So we explained, which we discussed yesterday, Korach wasn't saying your word is not the word of Hashem. But because of the nature of your relation with Hashem, you went and your relationship is whatever you want. God endorses your decision. It comes out your decision is always God's decision because he agrees with it. He endorses it. So therefore, that you radiate holiness, that's because he's special. So you're taking advantage of your relationship by taking it all for yourself. That's the point he's making. So his radiating holiness is not in contradiction to what Korach is saying or what these people are saying. You're taking advantage of your relationship. You could have shared the pie with everyone, but because of the nature of your relationship, you took it all for yourself. Therefore, you're not really a credible person.